Hello, creative people. Thank you for tuning into Melody or Witchcraft. I'm your host, Catherine Petricelli. On the podcast, we hear a poet read a work of their own and an Emily Dickinson poem of their choosing that contributed to their work. We discuss poetry, Dickinson, the fluidity of time, and the scope and sources of creative inspiration. The past is such a curious creature, Dickinson wrote. Join us to find out how it can teach us about our now.
You know how dreary.
Best witchcraft is geometry. To the magician's mind, his ordinary acts are feats. To thinking of mankind.
That was Kelli Russell Agodon reading Emily Dickinson. Kelli Russell Agodon's next book, Accidental Devotions, will be published by Copper Canyon Press this spring. Her previous collection, Dialogues with Rising Tides, was a finalist for the Washington State Book Awards. Kelli is the co-founder of Two Sylvias Press and teaches in Pacific Lutheran University's MFA program, the Rainier Writing Workshop. She is also the co-host of the poetry series Poems You Need with Melissa Studdard. Hi, welcome, Kelli. Thank you so much.
Hi, Catherine. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited about our talk.
So Best Witchcraft is Geometry. This is one of 3 or 4, I want to say 4 poems in which she mentions witchcraft. Not to mention, of course, the line from her letter that got into the title of this podcast, her letter to Thomas Wentworth Higginson. I would like to learn, can you tell me how to grow? Or is it unconveyed, like melody or witchcraft? So if you didn't know before, you know now. Tell me a little bit about this choice. Tell me about what draws you to Dickinson, and can you point to it in this poem?
Yeah, the reason I chose this poem and what drew me to it is I kind of view this poem as like a little poet's poem, which might be a different way of thinking at it. The witchcraft is being a master at your work. So whether you're like a surgeon, doing the perfect knitting or that, is that to the ordinary acts or feats, to thinking of mankind. So kind of our craft and our genius are just ordinary feats, but they look magical because we took the time, like a line break might be good. But I like that idea of geometry or science being, or mathematics. Well, geometry really is witchcraft to me because I do not understand it and I did not do well in it. But that idea that something so precise and rational is actually magical. And I like how she brings that in.
Yeah, and I guess when you put it that way, I could see her own work kind of taking that same track where it is this precision of craft. And she was very, very fond of the sciences.
Yeah.
She loved chemistry. She loved botany, for example, that she could see those things not apart from art. She also lived in a time when it was the Second Great Revival. It was this huge religious fervor, and science was a threat to that for many people. But she did not take that view.
Yeah, so, and also you can't not love this poem because that best witchcraft is geometry is just, I think, one of the best lines ever written.
No, I know. I always say I just want to explain Dickinson through Dickinson. Like we could just keep repeating the lines. That's all we have to say.
Exactly. That's it.
If I look at this long enough, and this is a different direction, but I wondered about if she might be lightly admonishing people for, I don't want to say small-mindedness. That's not, but nothing that strong.
I know what you're getting at.
Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. It's that kind of like, well, gosh, are you really that easily impressed, maybe?
Exactly. And it speaks to today. People falling for AI, that kind of like, oh, well, this must be real. So being kind of that fooled by it.
Yes. There is a line from one of her letters that I wrote down and when I was thinking about this that I love, and I can put the more full quote in the show notes. That's a hint. Go read the show notes. But it's actually not something she wrote in a letter, but it's one of those times where Higginson was quoting her in one of his letters to his wife. And he says that she says, "How do most people live without any thoughts?"
Ooh. Exactly. That is today. That is
Yeah.
today. But what's really magical about this poem is it is four lines. And that's one of the things I love about Dickinson's are these big things like eternity and time are in these like little envelopes. And this one just really takes me because sometimes I read her poem and I'm like, I don't know what's happening here. Especially as an undergrad, I really struggled with her until I did a little deeper dive into her. Just like I struggled with Bishop till I realized somebody told me read Elizabeth Bishop, believing she has a sense of humor, and then I enjoyed her work because I did not like
Oh, wow.
Elizabeth Bishop until then. And that was like the switch. And so I think for me, kind of realizing just the way she takes these large concepts and puts them into these little, yeah, I don't want to say postcards, but like I just like a little envelope, and that's envelopes are obviously something I connect with Dickinson due to her
Sure.
bazillions of letters.
Well, and the envelope poems, as they call
Yes.
them, right? The things that she wrote on tiny little scraps.
Yep.
Sometimes envelope flaps, or sometimes the backs of envelopes, or scrap paper, and things like that,
Yep.
which we could put down to New England practicality, but I don't know.
They're little
I
artworks. I have that giant book, and actually the book is so well done, you almost want to touch the paper because it looks like it's really there. It's one of the most beautiful books. The Gorgeous Nothings, Emily Dickinson's envelope poems.
That's right. Yes. And of course, you can also buy a tiny little book called The Envelope Poems that just has them as well. But The Gorgeous Nothings is gorgeous.
Yeah, it
It
is.
is, yeah.
They look real. The quality of that book is just, I think it is from 2013, so it's just well done.
I would love to just roll right into your poem
Okay.
because it rolls right out of Emily's poem. Yeah, you can feel free to introduce it or just read along. And also feel free if you'd like, since it's so small, you feel free to repeat Dickinson's before you read your own.
Gosh, you know what? I That is a great idea. I think I will do that. Okay, so obviously this first poem is Dickinson, and then I will move into mine. And Emily has always been a jumping off point for me. I'm not sure what it is about her. She's a poet. There's a few poets I dream about. Sylvia Plath is one. I've dreamt about Sylvia Plath at like a state fair, which is very strange. And Emily Dickinson is another. And this poem really was sparked by that first line. And here we go with Emily's poem and then right into my poem. Best witchcraft is geometry. To the magician's mind, his ordinary acts are feats to thinking of mankind. Accidental devotion to poets with smoldering wings. M, I agree. The best witchcraft is geometry. But an angel once told me to determine how long you'll live, count the numbers of letters in your poems, then write longer poems. Life multiplied by ink. We calculate ghosts by stanza. As good witches, we court disaster, mistake ourselves for moths drawn to every blaze. As rebel angels, we wear our halos as tube tops, nose rings. Make no apologies for our flame. And when our skin scorches paper, we revise ourselves as poems, our fountain pens exploding, igniting each page like a beacon. At night, we write each other, Dear one, I must know witch or angel, either. All women can fly.
Yeah. I'm going to start at the end.
Okay.
I must know which or angel either all women can fly. And I just feel so strongly in these lines the reference to the roles assigned to women that are often accusatory, that are at the whim of whoever is pointing the finger, crone and maiden and whore and wife and everything else, right? We are witch or angel, and the poem is saying, doesn't matter. A wing is a wing.
Exactly. Oh, I love the way you said that. Gosh, now I want a wing as a wing in my next book. That's exactly right. Like, why do we have to categorize? Why do we have to be one thing and not another? We're multitudes, as Whitman would say. We contain multitudes. And so I did really want to speak to the moment of women can be whatever they want. We can be witches and angels, and sometimes on the same day.
Absolutely. Of course, in this poem as well, we get so many references to poetry as such. So depending on how purist you are in your definition of an ars poetica, right, a poem about poetry, it is at the very least self-referential. This poem is aware of itself as a poem. It's something I actually really love in poetry. The poet Rick Barrett comes to mind,
Yes.
who he does that a lot.
Yes.
If you're listening, Rick, I love you. Come on the show.
I'll ask him. He's a friend of mine.
How do you feel about the role of that kind of pointing to itself? Because it happens in your work quite often. Is it the poetic answer to breaking the fourth wall? And is it a kind of intimacy with the reader? How do you see it?
Oh, that is such a smart question and really good insights because it's all of it. It is breaking the fourth wall, as a poem will do. I realized this book is actually a love poem to poets and poetry and to the reader. And I hadn't realized that when I was writing it. It's one of my favorite things is the life of the poet. And when I'm really deeply immersed in my craft and writing and the practice of writing, I just find so much joy in it. And I love all the word. I mean, I've got stanzas in here. And in one of my poems, I mentioned, the M dash. I want to M dash you. So when I go very deep in writing a book and when I'm really deeply writing poems, it's almost like poetry is circling around me and then it just kind of ends in on itself. And, I do always want to speak to larger topics. So in this one, I'm really speaking to the role of the women, and it's a very feminist poem and very like, hey, don't put us in a box. We're actually fine on our own. And also don't say which is a bad thing. We need to be allowed to fully be ourselves. And I think for me, because I am a poet and think in poetry, sometimes it's easier for me to explain that. But I do love a good wink at the reader. When I write my poems, I'm not thinking about the reader, but when I put the collection together, I do realize that this is going to be a book and someone may pick it up, and it cannot be me making a book for me. It's a handshake. I'm offering something to someone else, and I do not want it to be uninteresting or not engaging for them. So that's kind of after I write the poems, I do think about that aspect of the craft of who might be reading it. And I'm not thinking that I have to make it great for every reader because, we're definitely not everyone's cup of tea. And I wouldn't want to be. I'd rather be somebody's bottle of wine or, someone's martini. So that's kind of how I do my process.
Right. And I think just your last point there is great because we are raised to be people pleasers as women
Yes.
as well. So just jumping back to kind of the feminist eye on things, we want to appeal to a reader, not every reader.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that is something especially getting older, it's the best part of getting older is you don't really care about people pleasing. And if somebody doesn't like something, my younger self might have like got her feelings hurt, or I don't know, mine will just be like, well, I guess it wasn't for you, not your audience.
That's perfect. Yeah. Well, and I was so grateful to get a little preview peek into the collection that is coming out in just a couple months. And by the time this airs, it will probably be coming out in just a couple days.
Wow.
So
May 12th. Yeah.
Oh, May 12th. Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay. But the dedication to the book is for the quiet rebels and the devoted readers.
Yes.
So it really does kind of reach out. So love in many forms seems to be a bit of a theme
Yes.
in this season. With these conversations that I've been having, we have touched on love and continue to touch on love. So yeah, it's very sweet that reaching out to the reader. And the table of contents, I just have to note, if anybody is unfamiliar with your work, I mean, just reading the of contents is a poem of its own. And again, this maybe goes back to something that I was recently talking to another poet about on the podcast, and I called it hypercontextualization. I don't know if I'm just blowing smoke,
Ooh.
but that's the term I came up with. You like it?
I do.
It has a lot of syllables. So what I was talking about there was just how we can be writing, or how much should we be writing about right now, the very, very moment we're in, and all of the kind of social milieu and the pop culture, all the bits that we swim in this kind of postmodern time. And so some of your poem titles that, just to give a quick glance, that maybe encompass some of this. We've got After the Death of a Friend, I Feel Enlightened for Approximately 3 hours. And Patron Saint of Typos, and Some Days You Wonder If God Has Left the Group Chat. So I feel in a way like you sometimes say what many of us are feeling.
Oh, thank you. That is like a really nice compliment. So my second collection was titled Letters from the Emily Dickinson Room. And there was actually a room in Nye Beach, Oregon called, what was it called? Sylvia Beach Hotel. And they had rooms decorated literary. So I finished that book in the Emily Dickinson room. It was very white. It was very pretty. And it had like old desk. And it looked out to the Pacific Ocean. And that book had a lot of spirituality. And this book, kind of the spirituality comes back, but also technology, because for me, it's just in my face all the time. And so God gets pulled in a convertible at the end. God is in a group text, but what is God? And God is in this book a woman, a her, or a, non-binary person. But yeah, it was fun to write and to bring in the modern. I'm not good about writing about current events. They hit me hard, and that's something it's like vacations. I can't write about a vacation being on a vacation, but reflectively I can look back. That's how I am with the news. But for some reason, technology, and I think because, I'm an editor, I'm a poet, I'm on Zoom all the time. My phone is like a terrible best friend that distracts me from what I'm supposed to be doing. And so it's ended up in my work way more than I expected. And I do notice stuff about like after a friend dies, feeling enlightened for approximately 3 hours and then losing that feeling, because grief is such a very specific place when you're in it. You don't understand. For me, I don't understand how the rest of the world is going on. I'm like, wait, someone died and you're going to work? You're at Costco? What's happening?
The appearance of God, and the appearance of God in very non-traditional, unorthodox ways, is very Dixonian of you.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yes,
I appreciate
absolutely.
that. Oh, and I did want to say something about, you mentioned the quiet rebels and devoted readers. The quiet rebels is really, so many of the friends and artists and really creative people I know are introverts, but they're rebels. Like every time you write a poem, I feel like that's an optimistic and rebellious act against all that's going on in the world. So I really kind of wanted to acknowledge the people who are more quiet, or who leave parties early, or just pet the cat like I do and be like, I got to get out of here. And to appreciate the power of quietness, the quietness of a poem, and also readers. I love when people are devoted to reading.
There are many poets that run through the book. Edna St. Vincent Millay makes an appearance, Rilke, of course, Plath. So it is for those who revel in it, I think, for sure. And I may be a little far away from the text for folks now, but I can read out these lines. I'm just going back to Accidental Devotion to Poets with Smoldering Wings, because also our fountain pens explode, igniting each page like a beacon. I heard the poets light but lamps themselves go out from Dickinson. That kind of what we're doing is important on the page. It's important. It's a revolution of its own.
Imagine if everyone woke up and wrote a poem each day, what kind of a world that would be, or even painted a picture or did a drawing. So I do feel like art is kind of, for me, the light in the world. It just keeps me hopeful and moving forward. And what is the Dickinson, I go out with a lamplight looking for myself. I'm misquoting her a little bit.
With lamps, yes, looking for myself.
Yeah.
Well, this certainly isn't the only place, this poem, where you reference Dickinson in the book. She is perhaps the most mentioned poet. And you touch on something that we haven't talked about on the podcast before, and that is Emily and Susan. So Susan Dickinson being her sister-in-law who lived next door, married to her brother Austin, a potential muse and love of Dickinson. Of course, this is something that Adrienne Rich was writing about back in the 70s. No one was listening to her, but that's another podcast, as I like to say. So, and I sensed that the speaker in your poems had a kind of wistfulness almost, or was almost envious of Dickinson, perhaps, because Dickinson never did kind of check a box, right? And it felt like in Accidental Devotions, the speaker is looking back on paths not taken and kind of having suffered for having had to choose back in the day from a list of options that was available, but might never have really suited.
Right, right. No, that's a really good, as a bisexual woman, that intimate relationship with Susan and, reading the letters she wrote to her hit me hard. And, as a young person, I was not out it was the 80s in Seattle, and there was a magazine, the bisexual magazine was called Anything That Moves. And that wasn't me.
Oh my God.
So I didn't adopt that term till later. I know. It's all of those stereotypical things about, bisexuals, greedy, anything that moves, hypersexual. And I
swinging from the chandeliers. That was the other journal, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's why you're right. The speaker definitely, and me, even myself, has that wistfulness for these intimate letters, whether it was, something they're definitely mentioning, I want to kiss you and that, but we don't know. These are letters. So we're just kind of coming in from 100 years later, trying to figure it out. And I don't think we need to figure it out. It's what you said. We don't need to put ourselves in boxes and just kind of be. And I really appreciated that friendship, just like the friendships I have with, my friends. But I do love that it had that mystery to it, which now we're removed from it. What is it, like almost 200 years since she was born? Is that right? 1830?
Yeah. 195. Yeah.
195. Yeah. And
so who's counting, really?
Yeah, that's right. Not us. So we're just it's fun to peer back into the past. I had a friend, Susan Rich, who would call poets find your dead mentors. That's what she would tell her students, find your dead mentors.
Oh, yeah.
And then read everything they write and learn from them, read their letters, read their poems. And so I think I felt a closeness with Emily and how she felt about Susan, because I felt that way about other women myself throughout my life.
Right. You're right. We don't know anything for sure. So we only have Emily's letters to Susan. We don't have Susan's letters to Emily. Those would have been burned after Emily's death. But we know that Susan received the vast majority of poems of any of her correspondence, and that it does seem like she kept everything. And yeah, we could go on with hints of this and that, but regardless, it was quintessentially probably the most important relationship for Dickinson. Can you talk a little bit about those dead mentors? Like, what is it that the dead bring us that our contemporaries might not be able to?
Oh, that is a wonderful question because I have such a strong relationship with the dead. So my friend Marty Solano died last year of ALS on May 5th, and she comes to me in dreams and tells me things. And I have this happening with poets, but it's really nice to have, I mean, not nice to have someone dead, but there's kind of that same spiritual connection. I was always the kid that was in the graveyard, like in grade school. There was no reason to be in the graveyard, but I was there. I felt it was my job to put flowers up after windstorms. Even I remember even in 3 years old or 4 years old, being in my closet with chalk and drawing ghosts on there. So something in me has always been connected to the past and believing, obviously, we're weird, we're poets, but when people pass, I always feel protected by them in different ways. When I lost my sister, my poetry mentor, when Marty died, I feel like they come to me in different ways. And with dead mentors, with the poets, for me, when I get very engaged in a poet, and this can happen at a residency where you have that time and you're offline. I have to be offline. That it's almost like I'm getting, my brain is taking notes from the afterlife. Like sometimes I can hear them in my mind. Like I've heard Marty talk to me in my mind when I was in Ireland in, I think it's called the Baron, where like
The Burren.
that's it, the Burren. Yes, we were there and we were with a poet and we were writing, and
Yeah, County Clare.
that's right. And it was like a very spiritual, amazing, intimate relationship where I could hear her saying, Kelli, you need to write that poem. Because I stopped writing after she died. I just went, I think I'm done. I think I have written every poem. And I heard her say that. And then I wrote the poem. And then that night she came to me in a dream and said, I only need a teacup of wine. I only need a teacup of wine now. And she was healthy again and dancing. And so I do feel that as poets, we can also maybe not get that level because Marty was a personal friend, but with other poets, you can have them as a mentor because all of their work is out there. Many have letters, especially like Bishop to Lowell. Those are really interesting. Plath. I mean, we've got journals. And I don't know, it's almost for me when you go on like that dead poet's path that you have this kind of group of cheerleaders cheering you on, even though they're not here on earth.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I mean, I'm somebody who's asking questions about literary ancestors, so yeah, I think so, but I might be biased. We have, we calculate ghosts by stanza from your poem.
Right.
Yeah, and ghosts certainly appear quite often, ghosts and angels, right?
Yeah.
In this work. In thinking about your connection to the past, we were talking about this before we started recording. You've been thinking recently about time,
Yes.
quite a bit. And in what way? Can you say more about that?
I'm always thinking about time. I worry about time every day. I'm surprised I'm alive. I have felt this way since I bought a convertible in my 20s because I didn't think I was going to make it to 30. And then we have this Emily Dickinson poem, Forever is composed of nows. 'Tis not a different time except for infiniteness and latitudes of home. And I love that first line, Forever is composed of now. And it's that idea that, what is the opening quote here? Forever might be short, Emily Dickinson is the opening quote to this idea that forever is long and short, but we have all these human constructs on time. Like you eat at a certain time, and then we have calendars, and then we have, and so in a certain way, it can shorten time because you're like, oh my God, I got to get ready by tomorrow. But this idea that, forever is composed of nows is very freeing for me because it means as a Capricorn, I get really anxious about deadlines. I do not like to miss a bit deadline. I like to front load, get a whole bunch of work done. And so I need to have this more expansive look on time. In the book, I'm always talking about how temporary we are. I'm so aware that at one moment we can be talking to somebody and they're not here. And maybe that's from, like past trauma of people dying quickly in my family and losing my dad at 22. And also, my family's Catholic, and they would tell me things like, this is your cousin Leon, and he drew his grave, and 3 days later he died. Now, maybe this isn't what you should be saying to like a 6-year-old, because then you get into magical thinking, like, oh, if I draw my grave, I'm going to die. Because I have thought that in some of my poems when I'm writing, like, because I will go to that darker place. But I think that is what I think a lot about time is we feel like we are living in history and that this is the worst time, but we forget all the other atrocities that have happened to humans throughout the years. I always think about Terrence Hayes wearing two wrist watches. He wears two watches. And I just love that idea. To me, that's having a little bit of power over time. Yeah, I'm wearing two watches.
Wow, we must have been super powerful in the 80s with like swatches going all the way up our arms.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah, I just got a new Swatch watch. Yes.
Is there anything else you wanted to bring out about that through thread of Dickinson in how you approach work?
Yeah. The book is titled Accidental Devotions because it really speaks to how we get devoted to things. And we might not, and it's an oxymoron, it's accidental devotions when devotions are supposed to be intentional, but we're and I think it started with me kind of like realizing, oh my God, am I devoted to my smartphone? I'm holding it like a prayer book. And started to think about, well, what else have I been accidentally devoted to? And Dickinson was one of them. She was an early poet for me. She was like when I was at the UW with Linda Beards and I was taking all my literature classes and my poetry classes. I would open Dickinson's book and I would like light my candle. And at one point I was wearing berets, but that was when I was kind of into Kerouac. But it was just kind of a grounding for me. And to have, someone from the past, her and Whitman are like the mom and dad for me as a young poet. When I started to write, I did not expect for her to come into my work. In fact, when she kept coming into my work, I was like, I've already written about Dickinson. She comes in a lot, and a lot of other poets come into Letters from the Emily Dickinson Room. But I kept thinking, oh my gosh, why is she showing up? Maybe she shouldn't be here, but she kept engaging with me. And then I had the dream about her, and I thought, you know what? It's time for her to come back again. And it was really meaningful. And also, I realized books talk to other books, just like the dead mentors. When you write a poem, you could be having a conversation with Sylvia Plath or Langston Hughes or someone else because you're part of the literary conversation. And I just love that. So I allowed her, she's going to do what she wants, but I just appreciated that she kept showing up and decided, no, I'm not going to change her for some reason she's coming to me. And I feel drawn to write about her. So I just did. And in the most loving way and trying to be as respectful I can for who she is. And I didn't want to be like, Emily Dickinson is, bisexual or this, though there is a funny poem about accidental devotion in which my search history becomes a prayer where I had Googled Emily Dickinson, Susan Gilbert, queer? And then I did find a really great like marginalia by Maria Popova about kind of the letters and that. But I feel like when your dead mentor or when other poets or things are coming into your work and you don't know why, just write that poem. You don't have to use it in the book. There were some poems she came into that didn't quite make it in here because I didn't feel like I honored her or the moment as I should, but they were a stepping stone to something else.
Right. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that piece of process. That's great. Just for fun, I will share with you, and you might remember this. One of the workshops that Jane Hirschfield did for Two Sylvia's Press, I think it was last summer, and I have the exact quote, but I don't have it handy. She talks about how the very last thing you want to do before you write poetry is read Emily Dickinson. Because she's like, the worst thing you could possibly do is write imitation Dickinson. But that's very much not what you're about. You are addressing her. You are engaging with her as a
Right.
poet and a person, which I think is just really heartfelt and very relatable and intimate. So
I find a companionship with her. I see some of myself in her in different ways, and it was a very different time, obviously.
well, Kelli Russell Agodon, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you spending the time.
Oh, Catherine, thank you. You asked wonderful questions and you made me learn a few more things about my book that I didn't quite know. And I love that when you have a book out in the world, I'm learning from it now because I'm now seeing it in a different light. So thank you.
Thanks for being with us today for Melody or Witchcraft. You can find out more about today's guest by going to agodon.com. That's AGODON.com. Our theme music is by Emma Wallace. You can find us on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple, among other places. For the complete show notes, however, go to the links at melodyorwitchcraft.com, which will bring you to my Substack. Photos, links, correct poetry formatting. Regardless of where you find us, please comment, like, repost, recommend. We'd love to hear from you.
Dreary to be somebody, how public like a frog, to tell one's name the livelong June to an admiring bog. I'm nobody. Who are you? Are you nobody too? Then there's a pair